This morning, Beto O'Rourke and Greg Abbott, both open to reducing penalties for pot possession. Is Texas on track to loosen marijuana laws? 44 days until the Texas primary, we are focusing on the Republicans running for agriculture commissioner. James White, Sid Miller, and Kerry Council all on the program with us. Last month was the warmest on record in Texas since 1889. That news worsening the drought across the state. So at what point do Texas leaders take action? And why are so many Texas school superintendents quitting? There are 50 job openings right now, including positions at some of the state's biggest districts.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state. Let's begin this week with the top political headlines here in Texas. Two high-profile Texans are running for mayor in their respective cities. In Austin, it's State Rep Celia Israel there, who announced her candidacy, joining a couple of others wanting to replace Steve Adler in November. Adler, of course, is term limited out. And in Dallas, the Dallas ISD school superintendent, Dr. Michael Hinojosa, announced that he is quitting education. Multiple sources tell us that he is now expected to announce a run for Dallas mayor. The future of the far-right group called the Oath Keepers might now be in question. The FBI arrested the leader of the group in Little Elm, that's in North Texas, on Thursday. Stuart Rhodes and 10 others are charged with seditious conspiracy for their role in the attack on the U.S. Capitol last January 6th. And Rice University in Houston is accused of price-fixing tuition in order to limit financial aid for students. Rice is one of 16 universities named in a federal lawsuit. 5 former students from some of those schools are behind this suit. Rice is denying the allegations. Now to one of the big statewide races that we'll be watching in the March primary, the Republican race for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. Here are the 3 men on the ballot for that race. State Rep James White, the incumbent Sid Miller, and a rancher named Kerry Council. And since Council's name comes first in the alphabet, he is the first up of the 3. Mr. Council, welcome to our program. To our knowledge, you have no political experience. Tell us where you see a path to victory against 2 political veterans here.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And one of the things that I do want to bring up that I was on the school board, which I think that's probably one of the most important jobs in the state of Texas, even though it's probably the least recognized job, is I was on our independent school district school board for a couple terms, and you're handling 2 of the most important factors, your people's kids and people's money. So other than that, that's the only thing that I've really been in the political arena. But I think people are tired of the status quo, and people are tired of the career politicians, and people want fresh blood. People want people that are in the industry, and that's why I decided to run. As I've been in a lot of people throughout the beef industry and the different Texas commodity industries have welcomed me into the arena, and they've actually encouraged me to join the race because they're just tired of the career politicians and the empty promises.
Kerry, let me ask you this. Some of your priorities on your website are to secure the border, lower property taxes, control inflation. That's obviously red meat for Texas primary voters, but it's not the responsibility of the agriculture commissioner of the state.
That's exactly right. But that if you're a voice in agriculture and you're a voice in Austin, you can be a proponent for that and be a voice to the constituents. And that's where I think Austin has gotten lost. They don't listen to what the constituents actually want. I'm hearing it over and over and over down the border how we're having problems with the illegals, and I'm going to use that word. The illegals coming over and they're breaking through fences, and they're tearing down the water wells and plugging their cell phones in, and all the ranchers on the border having to go through and check their fences on a daily basis. The water rights is a huge factor on my table that I think that we need to make sure that the landowners maintain their subsurface and surface water rights. And inflationary spending, it's not so much that you have control of that, but you need to bring that to the public knowledge. One of the things that the public doesn't understand, it's not the rich farmers out here that are making the money. It's not all rich farmers. When they think about agriculture, that's all the urbans think is, it has nothing to do with us. And agriculture involves everyone. If you eat, if you wear clothes, if you have leather boots on, leather purse, you're involved in agriculture. If you've got a garden or landscaping in your yard, you're involved in agriculture.
You mentioned the border a moment ago, too. I think you have been pretty clear that you advocate for closing our borders as well. But obviously, as you well know, Kerry, Texas agriculture relies on exports. And Mexico is the state's #1 export destination. Texas farmers send almost $1 billion worth of beef, of corn, dairy, and other products down there. So wouldn't closing the borders though hurt Texas farmers and cost jobs in this state?
Well, when we close the borders, we want to close it in a professional way. The borders have never been closed in our entire lifetime. The borders have never been closed. If you ask the immigrants that come in, they've come across and they've done it the legal way. And I think we need to streamline the way we do the immigration process. We need to have the immigrants coming in because we have to have the immigrants come in to work our ranches and work our farms and work throughout the industry. So it's not so much closing it, and it's a misnomer that Trump had the borders closed, but a free reign to come back and forth across the borders is something that we cannot tolerate. We can't afford that as citizens of the United States, and we can't afford that as Texans. It's the free reign back and forth is we're bringing disease over, we're bringing cartel over, we're bringing a lot of bad things, drugs over, and bad things that we just don't want to have over here. But if we streamline the immigration process and allow the immigrants to come over that really want to work and streamline that process, I think that would really benefit Texas.
All right, Mr. Counsel, we appreciate the time. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Let's pause with the candidates for a moment to discuss something affecting all Texans, especially those in agriculture. Last month, December 2021, was the warmest since 1889. The state climatologist at Texas A&M revealed that, and those warm temperatures have also exacerbated drought conditions in Texas. So will this drive lawmakers to actually react? Let's pose that question first to Ross Ramsey, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Ross, let's start right there. Climate change is something that many Republicans brush off as cyclical, going on with the planet. But at what point do Texas leaders take notice and address this?
I think when you start having problems that are clear public policy problems. The state climatologist says that the average temperature was 12 degrees above normal. And as you said, a lot of the state is in drought right now. Those become public policy problems very quickly. It becomes an agricultural problem, a water problem. Weirdly, when the average temperatures go up, you get more harsher winters like the one we had last year. So that's a potential public policy problem. I think at some point you have to start paying attention to this just because it's in your face.
And then the other story people are kind of chattering about right now, both of the leading candidates for governor are open to reducing penalties for marijuana possession, and in O'Rourke's case, to actually legalize it in Texas. What's your reaction to this? How likely is it that Texas might get to a point where it loosens marijuana laws?
I think it's going to take a while for the political class to catch up in full, particularly Republicans, because their voters are a little bit more resistant. But this is something we've been polling for a long time. In 2010, 42% of Texans thought pot should be legal for small or large amounts of possession. Now it's 60%, and eventually people in office are going to figure that out.
Yeah, and we'll have to react to that too, probably. Ross, thank you. We'll have more from you in just a moment here. Coming up, the two other Republicans on the ballot for Texas Agriculture Commissioner, incumbent Sid Miller and State Rep James White. Both are with us in a moment. And why are so many Texas school superintendents quitting all at once? 50 job openings, including some at the state's largest districts. And if you want to keep up with Texas politics during the week, you should subscribe to our podcast. It's called Y'all-itics. New content, fresh interviews. Episodes drop every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Let's resume with our coverage this morning of the Republicans running for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. Next up is the incumbent, Sid Miller. Commissioner, welcome back to our program. You said you want a third term because there are projects that you still want to work on in 4 more years. What specifically are those?
Well, our biggest program is food nutrition. I've taken the school lunch program. I'm responsible for 5 million school meals each day. But when I came on board, we weren't serving any local products. So now we've got our schools buying $65 million worth of locally grown products served in our lunchrooms. No added salt, no dyes, no preservatives, never flash frozen. But I'm not stopping there. We're going to continue to work to make those school meals more nutritious and more edible.
Commissioner, let's talk politics for a moment, too. One main theme that both of your Republican opponents are talking about is returning ethics to the office. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we have the highest ethics of any elected official in the state. We just these guys are way behind. They're desperate, and desperate candidates do desperate things. They're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at me in hopes that something will stick. I haven't been charged with any ethics violations. Neither has my political consultant. But they're trying to connect all the dots somehow and get a headlines, and they've actually done that. They've got a few headlines.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that for a moment, because obviously over the last 8 years, Commissioner, you have had some unwanted headlines, personal trips to Oklahoma and to Mississippi as well. The political consultant you were talking about a moment ago as well, under investigation for selling hemp licenses. You clearly have not been charged with anything, but do you have any regrets about those headlines over the last 8 years?
You know, that trip to Oklahoma, fully investigated by the Texas Rangers, and it was prosecuted in the Travis County DA's office, the most liberal DA in the United States. Same office that went after Rick Perry and Kay Bailey Hutchinson and Tom DeLay. And you know what they found? They got the evidence from the findings from the Rangers and said, you know what? We're not even taking this guy to the grand jury. There's nothing here. Of course, they didn't get printed in the paper. So there's nothing there. That was all by a liberal group called Progress Texas, funded by George Soros. So the penalty is the process. You know, all they need is some kind of headline. And that's what these guys are doing. You know, they're trying to confuse people with misinformation, paint me in a bad light. It's not going to work. People know me. I've got a stellar record as your ag commissioner. We just went through Sunset, got a glowing report from the Sunset Commission, the highest ranked agency that they had reviewed in years.
Yeah, and Sunset, for our listeners who might not be familiar with it, is where the legislature looks at each department that it funds. It's part of the state and decides whether to continue it. So that's a normal process that happens for every department. I do want to continue on with politics for a moment here too, Commissioner. Polls show that you obviously lead in this race as the incumbent, but the polls also show that 61% of Republican primary voters have not yet made up their minds in this race. Why do you think that is?
Well, no one's paying attention to the elections right now. Elections aren't on anybody's mind. They're going to get there pretty quick because unless they move the date, it's March 1st. I've got a huge lead. These guys are, behind 30 plus points. One of them has 3%, and the other one has 2%. So, I mean, they have no idea who these guys are. They don't have enough time. It's 32 days until early voting starts. I just don't think they're going to get there, but I'm working really hard. I'm a hard campaigner. I drive hard, anything I take on, and I'll be making 4 campaign events today.
Commissioner, we appreciate the time and good luck to you.
Thank you. God bless.
The third and final Republican candidate for this position is James White from Southeast Texas. He served a decade in the state legislature. He was that body's only black Republican, and Representative White is hitting hard at the incumbent there, Sid Miller. Representative White, welcome back to our program. Let's get right to it here. You recently called the incumbent Sid Miller a fake conservative. How so?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on this great Sunday morning. Look, I'm a proud Texan. I'm a proud, honorable discharged veteran. I served in the Berlin Brigade under our commander-in-chief at that time, Ronald Reagan. We saw the wall come down. I had the opportunity to come back to our state, that's Texas, served as a public school teacher, football and basketball and soccer coach. And in 2010, I won a race against an entrenched 16-year Democrat and began a 6-term journey as a member of the Texas legislature. And most notably this last session, Jason, I was chair of Homeland Security and Public Safety. When I was being chair of that committee, I made sure that constitutional carry got out for a vote and it's law. I made sure that I worked with my fellow legislators and we increased border security to $3 billion from $800 million. Unfortunately, when the current commissioner chaired this same committee, he sat on vital Second Amendment legislation like open carry, constitutional carry, campus carry. And when he was in the legislature, he voted to give in-state tuition to folks who have entered our country illegally.
We're seeing you from down there in Hillister in Southeast Texas. You have quite a resume you just laid out there. Why in the world do you want this job?
Well, look, I'm a small small beef cattle producer myself. I do own marketable timber here in Southeast Texas. Look, I love our Texas. I love my state. And I love farmers and ranchers because they're that group of folks that really determine the prosperity of our state and the freedom of our state. And they need a Texas Commissioner of Agriculture that's going to protect and promote them. They don't need a Texas Commissioner of Agriculture like the current leader or the current commissioner that raises exponentially double and triple taxes and fees on producers and entrepreneurs. We don't need a agriculture commissioner that finds ways to saddle small businesses and barbecue establishments and producers with extra burdensome regulation as the current commissioner has. We need a current commissioner that's going to protect and promote this industry, not saddle it. And we definitely don't need one that has a culture of incompetence and corruption and ethical compromises as well.
Representative White, Donald Trump endorsed the incumbent in the Republican primary in Texas today. What is that worth?
The president has endorsed, President Trump that is, he has endorsed all statewide candidates in this race. It's just unfortunate that the current commissioner did not tell the president before he did that announcement on his behalf. He did not tell the president that his campaign consultant has been picked up by Texas law enforcement, arrested and sent to the Travis County Jail, is under investigation, has another court date on March the 4th, on March the 1st for attempting and allegedly selling access on hemp licenses for the Texas Department of Agriculture in the Texas Department of Agriculture building. And I'm asking the commissioner to suspend his campaign, help the Texas law enforcement, make these farmers and ranchers and entrepreneurs that have been scammed, help them find where that $30,000 is. These people need this money. This was what probably their life savings that was stolen from them.
Representative White, we will leave it there and await the results of that investigation too. Thanks so much for the time and good luck to you.
God bless you and God bless Texas.
Coming up, school superintendents are quitting across Texas. Do their departures, though, really impact the classroom? That's part of our conversation next on The Realm. Time now for Reporters Roundtable. Ross, Bud, and Bernadine are with us for this segment. Ross, let's start with you on this. And school superintendents across the state, they are quitting. The big question a lot of people have, there are different politics in each place, but what is driving them out?
Well, I think if you've been watching any of the news that we've all been carrying about school boards and the noise that parents are giving the school boards, sometimes for good reason, sometimes not, I think it's a pretty high pressure situation. And a lot of these people are looking at it and saying, I've had enough.
It certainly has been high pressure lately. Bud, what do you think about this? Does this really impact a child's classroom, I guess is the biggest question many parents have?
Well, it actually does. One of the factors that of successful districts is stability. When you have both a superintendent and board leadership that's in place for a long time, you have more success in that district. So all these districts, more than 50 in Texas, are going to be starting over.
More than 50 in Texas, Bernadine. We see Fort Worth and Dallas ISDs both restarting, including Richardson ISD in North Texas and Louisville ISD. How big of a deal is this for education in North Texas?
It's a very big deal, especially since we're in a pandemic. And I think that the superintendents, they are just frustrated and tired of the political climate. It is no longer about teaching students. It's more about what a political point is at any given time. So it's crucial because the kids are trying to adjust to the pandemic, and now they're going to have to adjust to new leadership if they can find a new leadership.
And speaking of politics and education, Bud, Texas is remembering, the nation is remembering the late Dr. Martin Luther King this weekend. But when we talk about the politics of race, it has really turned bitter, especially with things like CRT, critical race theory.
It just seems like that a large faction of the nation, the Republican Party conservatives, you can tell from the critical race theory bill in the legislature They want to teach the Civil Rights Act in 1964, but it seems like nothing's supposed to have happened since then. Not affirmative action, not minority business set-asides. It seems to be civil rights equality and not anything with more progress. I'm worried that even the word woke is becoming a racial slur.
You know what? That's a good point. I tweeted that out not too long ago, and people were, suggesting things like that. Bernadine, let me ask you the same question. The politics of race this holiday weekend, as we remember Dr. Martin Luther King, will this slow down at all? Will it die out, or is this just the beginning of more to come?
Jason, race relations and the topic of race relations has always been a sensitive issue in America, and it's no different in Texas. It's not going away. It's just at different times during elections, certain politicians see it as a way to drive a wedge between different factions. So it's going to get worse in the sense that you have some politicians who see using this CRT, the critical race theory, as a way to drive a wedge or make divisive politics. So it is going to make a dent in that, but it's not new. Racial politics is not new.
Yeah, it is not new. Ross, you get the final word on this morning.
It's been almost 54 years since Reverend King was assassinated, and we're still talking about the same things, as Bernadine says. We've got all these voting disputes in Washington and Austin. It seems to be just a never-ending fight.
Unfortunately, that's the case. We appreciate that. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate you joining us, and thanks for watching Inside Texas Politics as well. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. Hope you can join us then. Take care.